Hi, my name is Bob Marzano from Empower Learning, and this is the first in a series of little recordings we're doing on the related topics of competency-based education, equity, and learning management systems. Now you might think that's a strange putting together of ideas. They seem somewhat disparate, but actually we don't believe that at all. First of all, equity. Big topic, it always has been a big topic. Um, um, is still problematic in terms of actually ensuring that there is as much equity as possible, in our K through 12 system, although we're getting much better than we ever were before. I'm not going to go into the history of schooling in the United States, but if you ever have a chance to look at that stuff, it's very powerful. Arguably what we consider K-12 education as we see it now, really started in the early part of the 20th century during the kind of industrial revolution, if you will. And schools were put together, mostly in large cities, and that was, because the society realized, we have to have, formal schooling of students, not just apprenticeships. And they followed the models that were popular at that time and just kind of made intuitive sense. We have to group students, and the groups will be based on age, and if you're in a certain age group, you're at a certain grade level, and therefore you get a certain content, and therefore you move at a certain pace. Everybody moves at exactly the same pace. Now, we believe that represents a barrier, to equity. Specifically, the fact that students in the current system at specific age levels receive the same content and move at the same pace as everybody else. That really is an equity issue. And here's why. Just think about it for a bit. If I'm a student at a certain age level, and I am, let's make me a fifth grader, and I am I'm in mathematics and being taught content. Well, if I have not mastered the content necessary to address fifth grade mathematics, I'm not going to do well. Okay, and almost by definition. Now, other students who have mastered what's necessary for fifth grade mathematics will, probably do very well. Now, how's that an equity issue? Well, the mastery of content is not just a function of being in a classroom. It deals with the resources that you have at home and the support that you have at home and the background, et cetera, et cetera. And so what gets baked into the cake here in the current system is that even though your ability as a student to learn, content at a specific grade level is mediated by, the resources at home that have helped you or not helped you, we can't account for that in the current system. That's the way it is. And so students who, didn't master the previous content probably don't do well in the current content, and that keeps proliferating up through the grade levels. Kind of goes the other way too. What about students who already know the content? They really don't have an opportunity to learn more advanced content more quickly, which really is not then providing them access to all the resources and opportunities that they should have, to kind of fulfill, their full potential relative to that specific subject area. Now, how does CBE fit into it? Because the problem's obvious. CBE we offer as a solution, at least a partial solution. These are very complex problems, obviously. By definition, in a CBE system, competency-based education, now you might call it something else, standards-based education, standards-based schooling, competency-based schooling, whatever it is, mastery learning, although that really has a very specific meaning that goes back a few decades. The competency-based education, by definition, breaks content into smaller little pieces or topics, we tend to call them. So instead of talking about fifth grade mathematics, you talk about the topics that represent fifth grade mathematics and the topics that represent sixth grade mathematics, and so on and so forth. Now, if you're going to do that, you need an LMS that actually allows the teacher, the student, and parents to see how students are doing on those particular topics, and what they have to do to move up, or if they're they can also see evidence of, well, there are topics that are prerequisites for these that student didn't do well. And many LMSs don't allow for that. And if they don't allow for that, they're really not allowing for a competency-based system. So in Empower, it's a screenshot from Empower. Just let me explain this briefly. It's called the target browser. The target browser shows all targets or topics, that a student, is working on right now and has to work on in the future. And you have a lot of options as to what you look at. If you look at the bar that starts with the little orange box that says select all, notice that is not selected. Then you can see that in mathematics here, there are targets, that go, from grade 1, and below, all the way up through grade 12. And those targets themselves are organized into bigger targets, bigger categories. For example, algebra. Okay, these are all the topics within algebra, but these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 topics actually cross. Might cross 2 grade levels, grade 11 and grade 12. No, I take that back. Actually, these are all just for grade 11. Let's look at functions. Functions, has a number of topics, for grade 11, but also topics for grade 12. So a student, can see, exactly where they are now and then what's to come. And a student could be working on topics way above the grade level he or she is currently in. Notice the metric we're using. It says a 3 here, a 3 here, 2 here. We're using a scale, and you don't have to use this particular scale. We recommend it, though, that goes from a 0 to a 4. So instead of a 100-point scale, it's really a 5-point scale, 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4. And 3 is usually the cut point. 3 is proficiency. And this particular student, now this is a screen for an individual student, and the target browser shows you that. It's a screen for an individual student. This particular student for algebra is doing just fine. Has for 4 of the 5 topics already has achieved a 3 on those. For functions, there are a number of topics, has a 3 on most of them at the 11th grade level, has not started on this one, has a 2.0, on one of them at the 11th grade level. You get the idea. There's also many versions or views of the target browser. Let me show you another one. This is one that isn't for particular topics, but shows you groups of topics. For example, this is analyzing claims. And notice up here, the select all is checked. So now you're looking at all the topics across early elementary, upper elementary, middle, high school, and then beyond. So everything's checked. So the green here represents that it's early elementary. Now there will be a number of specific topics in there, but this gives you a bird's eye view of how well they're doing on the topics that deal with describing claim. Notice the green, represents completed. And the orange represents working on. So this student, it's an individual student, for all of the topics that are dealing with describing claims. Now you have to go back to the other target browser to see exactly what those are. Has completed about 25% of them, has about 75% left to go. So what you have here is a lot of ways of seeing where the student is and what is left to do. Now, without that way of aggregating data and looking at it immediately, it's very hard to have an effective competency-based system. And if you don't have a competency-based system, it's hard to address this barrier, that is baked into the system where every student of a particular age receives the same content and moves at the same pace as everybody else. So these 3 are linked for us. Now we'll have a number of topics like this. They'll all be brief. We encourage you to take a look at the Power Learning website, to see other features of the system. Thank you very much.